Hardin's Creek, the year-old limited edition product line launched in 2022 by Beam Suntory, is back with another high-age release. This is the second of 3 releases this year, named the Hardin's Creek Kentucky series, which highlights Kentucky terroir. Each expression in the Kentucky series is a 17-year-old bourbon aged at one of the 3 Jim Beam Distilling Company locations, all in Kentucky: Claremont, Frankfort, and Boston. Well, we got the second release here from the Frankfort location. Let's see how different it is from the Claremont and if the experiment is working. Stay tuned, come right back. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C. from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, help grow the channel for 2023. Appreciate you stopping by. Now, since we will be doing some comparisons today, drinking a couple different bourbons, it's always good to have today's sponsor in your back pocket. It's ZBiotics. Today's sponsor is ZBiotics, the amazing prebiotic I've been using behind the scenes for a long time now. I've been taking it to whiskey tastings and to meetups and to a lot of different events that I've had over the summer. With all the great feedback that I'm getting from you guys, it's really become the first drink of the night for a better tomorrow. With all the different whiskey events I've been going to in the summer and all the whiskey blending I've been doing, ZBiotics has been paramount in just helping me get going the next day. So how does it work so well? ZBiotics was developed by some very smart scientists who knew the real problem is not dehydration. It's actually a byproduct of alcohol that is most responsible for rough mornings after drinking. ZBiotics basically produces an enzyme like the one your liver uses to break down this byproduct. So anytime I know I'm gonna have a few drinks, whether it be at an event, whether it be blending some whiskeys, I take ZBiotics, and the next day I can wake up, go to work, or get up, get back in the gym, and just get back and recover faster than ever. All you do is drink one of these about an hour before you start drinking, and that's it. You should still drink water, stay hydrated, and as always, get a good night's sleep. But ZBiotics will make it a lot easier to get off the couch, get out of bed, and start your day fresh. This is real science that works, guys. No random plant extracts, no off-the-shelf ingredients, no sugar added, and the best part, 100% money-back guaranteed if it doesn't work for you. So might as well give it a try. Here's how. Right now, you can get 15% off your first order of ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic by clicking the link in the description box and using my code MASHANDDRUM at checkout. On top of that, if you leave a comment below on how ZBiotics has worked so well for you, ZBiotics may choose you to win a free 12-pack. That's right, a free 12-pack of ZBiotics. So go grab some ZBiotics right now. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring the Mash and Drum, and thanks to you for making the sponsors happen. Cheers. So as I mentioned, this year's Hardin's Creek Kentucky series is a 17-year-old bourbon aged at 3 different Jim Beam Distilling Company locations: Claremont, Frankfort, and Boston. Now, the interesting thing is that all 3 liquids were laid down with the same mash bill at the same time 17 years ago. Exploring terroir, I think, is some of the stuff I love in bourbon, trying to figure out the differences, especially when you do the comparison. We see this a lot in Scotch, but it's really interesting to see it in bourbon. That's why I really kind of dig this series. So let's hear the details about the Frankfort edition. The Hardin's Creek Frankfort is 17 years old, or as it states on the bottle, 204 months old. The mash bill is undisclosed, and it's bottled at 110 proof for a price of $170. Now, we will be comparing it obviously to the Claremont, so let's dig in and try the Frankfort. All right, here we go. I'm trying to remember the Claremont, what it tasted like and smelled like, but this one, there is a lot of rye spice up front and a ton of tobacco. And it is super savory on the nose. Man, it's also a little hot. Even at 110 proof, you could tell like that rye spice is really coming in here. I mean, maybe a slight citrus note here as well. Kind of cinnamon red hots on the nose. I mean, your typical vanilla and caramels are there, but the oak, the rye spice, yeah, it smells like a fresh cigar. Man. All right. So if I remember correctly, that's a pretty long distance away from what the Claremont was. But again, we'll compare, but let's try the Frankfort. Here we go. More of the same on the palate. This is very oak driven, very spice driven. This isn't just like a black pepper to me. This is like black pepper, white pepper. I feel like I'm getting red pepper in here. Again, that cinnamon red hot note, a lot of oak. And the spice definitely carries from the front. As soon as this bourbon hit the front of my tongue, it started just tingling. You knew that spice was there. I think the back end is a little bit drying because of all that spice. But this has a hell of a finish for an 110 proof bourbon. And again, I mean, it's just hard to get away from how savory and spice driven this is. Like, I think it drinks hotter than 110 proof. I feel like if you told me this was 120 proof or more, I probably might believe you. So it makes me think that this could be the high rye mash bill that Jim Beam uses for Old Grandad 114, Basil Hayden, and so on and so forth. However, it even feels spicier to me than that. So I'm not really sure what that mash bill could be, but that would be probably my first guess. So the more you sip this, I think, obviously, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the spice stays, the tobacco stays, and obviously the oak stays. I think a little bit more caramel and vanilla kind of come to the forefront. It starts getting a little bit sweeter to kind of balance out the oak and the dryness a little bit. I do think that citrus note that I normally pick up in especially Old Grandad is somewhat there. It's a little bit muted because of the spice kind of overshadowing it, especially with all the oak presence, a little bit of a dry oak note as well. And that sweet tobacco just kind of finishes it off. All right, I cannot wait to compare it to the Claremont. Let's do it. All right, so here's the Claremont. Man, that cork is in there. Same stats, guys. 17 years old, 110 proof. The only difference is it is also the same mash bill, but it just was aged in a completely different location. So let's see what we got. Color on them is pretty close. I would actually argue that the Claremont might be slightly darker, but let's see what the nose brings. These are pretty different on the nose, which is kind of the point and why I love this experiment. The Claremont, I think, has a much more of a sweeter profile on the nose compared to the Frankfort. This is sweet and this is spice. So Claremont sweet, Frankfort spice. Again, I think when I reviewed it, Claremont reminded me of some of like my more favorite, you know, those old school 15-year Knob Creek store picks that are out of circulation, unfortunately, where you got a lot of good oak profile, you got some spice, but you also got some rich dark fruit notes in the bourbons as well, and I think that's what you get here with the Claremont. All right, let's try the Claremont. So coming off the Frankfort, the Claremont is a lot less spicy, although there is some spice there. There's some oak spice as well. Good finish, but a lot more dark fruit heavy. It's more of like a blackberry jam, blackberry preserves, maybe a little bit of like a black cherry preserve type aspect in there, all kind of intermingled between the oak and the sweetness, the front of the palate. Again, you still get some spice in the Claremont, don't get me wrong, but I think the sweetness of it just really balances it out, while I think the Frankfort is just all spice. Yeah, that Claremont to me is just a better balanced bourbon. I think it's got the spice, got a long finish. It's not as in your face of a finish as the Frankfort. The Frankfort, you get it immediately. The Claremont, you get it a little bit after the fact. You know, as I call it, the flag on the play. It's a late hit that you get right at the very end with the Claremont, where all that spice comes in, but it's very sweet and kind of fruit forward in the beginning. Final verdict here, Claremont, I believe, my opinion, again, it's gonna depend on your palate, but I think the Claremont has a much better balance overall, whereas I think the Frankfort, if you like rye-driven bourbons, more spice-driven, sweet tobacco, a little bit more oak to it, or influence, I should say, a little bit more oak influence in your bourbon, you're gonna like the Frankfort. All right, let's final break down this thing. All right, Hardin's Creek Frankfort, it's the second release in this terroir series that we're gonna see from Jim Beam. We got one more coming up called Boston, but the Frankfort, price $170. Secondary market value, I haven't really seen these as of yet, but they are just releasing this month. Now, being a 17-year-old bourbon, I have a feeling that this is gonna be somewhat limited, probably not a ton of bottles that we're used to from Beam, but maybe a little bit more available than some other limited editions because Beam does have a huge market share. So let's just stick with limited though. Value for this one is good. This is a good value. In a time where you'll see an 8-year-old bourbon for over $100, we are basically seeing $10 per year of aging, which is something that Jim Beam has done before in the past, especially with their Knob Creek series, the Knob Creek 15, the Knob Creek 18. So $170 for a 17-year-old bourbon in today's market, that's a damn good value. The most I pay is going to be retail. I mean, it's a really good value, I think. So 170 bucks for a 17-year. I think most folks will probably find this closer to 200 out in the market from what I've seen. And I think even for a 17-year-old bourbon at $200 at 110 proof, I still think is a pretty good value. When you talk about findable alternatives to this, that's really tough. There's just not many high-age bourbons like this out in the market for this type of pricing. The only thing I could really equate to it are Russell's Reserve store picks. Now, Russell Reserve store picks generally are 9 to 11 years old. However, if you want to experience what different warehouses can do, when you talk about Warehouse A, Warehouse B, Tyrone T, Camp Nelson's, all the different warehouses that Wild Turkey uses, you could start to figure out and see all the different flavor profiles you can get across a campus just using different warehouse locations, you know, for aging their whiskey. I feel like that might be the closest representation that could get somewhat close to this. But again, trying to find something this high age at this price, other than, you know, the Knob Creek high age releases, might be a little tough. And finally, what is the recommendation? Is it a skip? Is it a try before you buy? Is it a buy? Is it a buy and back it up? For this one, for me personally, I'll probably go with try before you buy. This one isn't a home run to me. I loved the Claremont. The Claremont to me was an outright buy. But for this one, I think the lack of sweetness might pull some bourbon drinkers away from this one a little bit. However, if you love spice, oak, if you love a little bit of sweet tobacco, if you like to pair whiskeys with cigars, this one might be in your wheelhouse. So for me, I'm gonna say try before you buy, but if that's your flavor profile, then go for it. I think a lot of people will like this one. I still think the Claremont is a little bit better, and I'm looking forward to what we're gonna get from the Boston edition. We'll see what happens. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review for the new Hardin's Creek Frankfort edition, the second release of 3 releases this year. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please find me on Instagram, and also make sure you like the video before you leave. Let me know down in the comments what you think about the series. If you're planning on getting all 3 because you want to try them all 3 together. I want to get all 3 just so I can blend them all together and see what happens. But with that said, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. See you next time right here on The Master and Drum. Cheers, folks.